Okay, so following straight on from that, given all our increases in inflation that most of us are all feeling a little bit uncertain about at the moment, this is a story about energy and food. And we know from literature in the US and the UK that there is a trade-off in a lot of vulnerable low-income groups around heat or eat, right? Whether you heat your home or you maintain consumption levels of food. So we wanted to investigate if that was actually present in Australia. And Australia is slightly different. It's not really a heat or eat question. It's more about energy or food. Because, of course, we cool our homes as well as heating our homes, right? So it's not quite the same comparison, but still important. And we've seen massive rises in energy and food prices. And the data I'm going to show you today actually goes up to 2020, and we know that that's just got a lot worse, okay, over the recent period. So it's not essentially up to date, but at the same time, we know exactly what we're seeing here is actually just going to be exacerbated. We're interested in energy because the ability to both heat and all the other energy needs of your home is just an essential part of life. And also that food insecurity is actually really important as well as part of an understanding about welfare of homes within Australia or generally. So we're going to look at this particular trade-off, and I'm a health economist, so I'm not going to go too much into the health outcomes of this, but we know energy policy and food insecurity have massive health consequences. So here's the historical price index data for electricity and gas and for food. Australia, the majority and the main source of energy is electricity within the homes, but there are some that use gas. So I put the gas prices on here. The results I'm going to show you today are going to be for energy and electricity and food, but the results hold if you look at gas as well. And you can see why, right? The gas prices have got the same trajectory as energy prices. And we're going to look at the relative cost of food, of electricity relative to food, okay? And you can see that electricity prices have gone up a lot steeper than the food prices. And our data, it goes from 2005 through to 2020. So we're really capturing all of that increase. And we know that that's just continued, okay, in recent times and actually got a lot worse. And actually this food price index has actually started to change its slope here as well in the more recent times. The data I'm going to use is from HILDA. For those who aren't familiar with HILDA, HILDA is a national survey collected on income and labour dynamics for Australia, connected by the Australian government. Really big survey, and it's a panel survey. So I'm following households through time. So I'm looking at as their income changes, as their circumstances change, controlling for all of that, and then saying, right, what is the impact on their consumption of energy and food as these food price indices have risen over this period. Okay, I have annual expenditure on energy and I have food expenditure. I'm going to exclude meals eaten out. I've got meals eaten out as a robustness test, and that doesn't make much difference. There is also some subjective measures around energy poverty about people going without and skipping meals due to money shortages, and I can use those to test the results that I'm getting from the expenditure data as well, because sometimes expenditure is not well recorded. For this survey, it is really well recorded because they actually look at their energy bills and they're looking at their food expenditure as well weekly too. And then we're looking at this at the annual level to do the analysis, right? But we can check it with these other questions, these subjective questions as well. And what do we find? This is the important picture. So we're going to look at this trade-off for the low income, because we know from the literature this is kind of a low income phenomenon. If you've got reasonable levels of income, then as energy prices go up, you switch away from discretionary spending. So maybe you don't buy a new car or you're not buying so many clothes. That has less welfare implications than if you're switching away from food. And that's the question we're looking at. So we're going to look at those people defined as being in the bottom 25% of the income distribution for Australia. And we're going to define that by people that are in poverty, near poverty, and everybody else in that low income group. And these are defined according to OECD measures around the median income and where you are in that median income distribution. So what do we see? Well, we see for a 10% increase in the relative prices of electricity compared to food, those people in poverty are going to end up increasing their annual expenditure by about $50 a year on energy and just under $50 a year on food. So in other words, the increase in prices means they have to buy more food and more energy. They can't afford to swap from food to energy because that group's really already on just minimum rations, right? So the increases that we're seeing now around food prices and energy prices are really going to be impacting this group significantly at this point in time. For the other groups, we see the trade-off, right? And we see an interesting trade-off. Those near poverty are really overcompensating, right? So the increase in their energy bills is actually less than proportional to the 10%. So they cut down their energy and they cut down their food. And that's because budgeting is really critical here. Otherwise, you're going to end up in this spiral position, right? They're on the cusp. So when prices are rising, this is my nervous group. They're cutting down their energy consumption, which is really bad because it means they're doing adaptive behaviours like staying in bed longer or you know, not going home, staying in the office longer, all those other adaptive behaviours that we can see. And that's obviously a concern. And the fact that they're cutting their food expenditure down so much is really quite frightening here. They're overcompensating, but we can understand that behaviour. And that part of the overcompensating is coming through because your food bills are weekly, but your energy bills are monthly, and they're really hard to budget for. And when you're on a tight budget, that's a really difficult thing to do. So they overcompensate, right? And then the rest of the people in the low income, this bar is just a bit longer than this one. So they're getting a bit better, but there's this level of energy consumption is still less than the 10% that you would have expected to see if they'd maintained their consumption. So they're reducing energy consumption and they're also reducing food consumption to be able to meet those food bills. So really what we're seeing here is a story about compensation that's coming from food expenditure to support energy expenditure and a whole load of hidden adaptive behaviours because energy expenditure is getting reduced as well. Which is all of a major concern for this group, and given the circumstances in Australia right now, an increasing concern as well, and important for us at this point. So summary is that, you know, those near poverty and those in low income are overcompensating, and part of the story we think is this mistiming of bills. So you're buying your food every week, but your bills are coming in weekly. So that ability to better budget for bills is really important. The UK and the US, in response to their trade-off between energy and food, have actually brought in meters where you might not pay, but you can see in dollar amounts what you've consumed, right? And that's allowing people to budget much better. They have the ability to budget. We can see they're budgeting really well for this data, but they just don't have the accuracy in the fuel bills, energy bills, to be able to accurately budget. And so enabling that will actually really help these individuals. And we see the strength there in their budgeting. They're over budgeting. So we want to be able to help them budget better because the implications of over budgeting here are such that they're actually going without when they don't actually need to in some instances because they're overcompensating. So we think that a lot of this is about uncertainty of energy bills, and of course, following on from Jannike's work, the ability to pick your providers better is really important, but also the ability to know how much you're going to need to pay is really important too. Interestingly enough, in Australia, we know that you can pay your bills, you can prepay monthly. In that very low income group, committing to that's really difficult, and so less do that from the information that we can see. So smart meters where you can actually see what you've consumed in dollar amounts would actually be a really good step forward and have had really good success in the US particularly. One of the other things I don't know about food is the food quality, right? So I can't tell from the expenditure data whether they're swapping to cheaper brands or whether they're actually consuming less because in terms of the expenditure. I know that they're consuming less overall, but I don't know what that means around food quality and nutrition. So from the health economist in me, I'm a bit limited here, but I do know that they're overcompensating and certainly reducing their food consumption to support the rise in energy consumption. And I think I'm out of time, so I'll stop. Thank you. That was great. Thank you.